Good morning, everybody, and welcome into the Steven Singer Studios of the Farzy Show. My name is Marc Farzetta. Thanks for joining me this morning. How about that win from the 76ers? We're going to get into that and plenty later on in the show. We also going to have Geoff Mosher. He is today's guest from Inside the Birds podcast with our other friend, Adam Kaplan. So much to get to with the Birds today. New developments in the Zach Ertz story. A couple of new developments, as a matter of fact. And how about this? Well, Howie Roseman waved his Howie wand, and all of a sudden, we're under the cap. And it really has a lot to do with Marquise Goodwin going back to the 49ers. So the Eagles find themselves in a much different position than they were in yesterday when we did the show. So at least that changed with the Eagles. Everything else, pretty much the same. But at least you're under that cap now. So that happened, and we can all be excited about it. As for signing anybody, not so fast. As for trading anybody to get something in return, definitely not. But under the cap, we can party. I think it was our friend Les Bowen that actually tweeted out the parade is Thursday. So I hope everybody's gearing up for that. I think it's going to rain. It's not going to be the best possible weather, unfortunately. But we'll get into everything Eagles with Geoff Mosher coming up in about 20 minutes or so. And then we will also, for the first time since being fired, Doug Peterson spoke to John Clark of NBC Sports Philadelphia. And I would say everything Doug said was rather predictable. He got fired for his coaches, basically. And he died on assistant coach Hill, Doug Peterson did. And that's kind of what we had already known. We finally heard it from his mouth. He has moved on with his life. He is most likely going to be back in the NFL next season, although he didn't say flat out that's what was going to happen. He loves Philadelphia. He wants to be embraced by Philadelphia. He wants to remember the good times in Philadelphia. And he feels, as you'll hear, because we will play for you the highlights of that interview with John Clark, a new podcast, Takeoff, with John Clark. And we'll let you hear from Doug Peterson himself and the closure that he has, as well as his relationship with Carson Wentz. There was a lot of detail there. I will say in his answer, my reaction to it was, oh, yeah, he and Carson Wentz totally didn't get along. It didn't go well. Whether it was one-sided with Carson Wentz or really it was two people that just couldn't get along, I think it's more of a one-way street. I think it was more Carson wasn't playing well. I think it was more along the lines of Carson wasn't playing well and felt like the team was taking out how they were playing as an entire group out on him. And that's more or less the impression I got from Doug Peterson's answer when he was flat out asked. And John did a good job asking this question because he got asked this question because it's a question a lot of us have. Was it really that bad of a relationship as it had been reported? And according to Doug Peterson, it wasn't. But the way he answers the question leads you to believe at least, that Carson Wentz wasn't exactly the most comfortable person in the Eagles locker room and certainly not the most comfortable person on the Eagles sidelines. With that being said, I have maintained the argument that Carson Wentz was a fine teammate to his teammates, to his fellow players. But when it came to coaching, when it came to management, probably not the best teammate in that regard. Maybe not the best employee. That's the way to say that. So we'll break that down. We'll let you hear from it. But I just got to get excited about a couple of things here. The first thing is Tobias Harris. This is exactly what you needed from Tobias Harris. They don't win that game last night without Tobias Harris. That goes without saying. 30 points in that game. Four clutch points down the stretch. 2 big buckets, backing down Bullock down the baseline, backing him down into the paint, and being able to get 4 points in the back-to-back possessions for the Sixers. That's what helps them seal the deal. It's also watching Seth Curry in the third quarter. He really kept the Sixers in it in that third quarter. Ben Simmons, if I could break down the game last night, excuse me, it was Ben Simmons and Tobias Harris in the first half. They were basically scoring all the points for the Sixers. Ben had 10 of his 16 in the first half. And then in the third quarter, it was Seth Curry carrying this team, hitting a couple of clutch threes. It was Ben Simmons forcing a couple of turnovers and driving the lane. But in the fourth quarter, you saw Seth Curry hit another big three. And they even used this term last night. Tobias Harris was the 76ers closer. And that's what you needed from him. And he said it after the game with JoJo out. And by the way, it was his birthday yesterday. So he wanted to make sure that he could enjoy his birthday. Tobias Harris wanted to make sure that Joel Embiid could enjoy his birthday. And Tobias Harris goes out there and just drops 30 points on the Knicks, all sorts of ways. Threes, inside game, mid-range jump shots. And the thing that jumped out to me the most, aside from just looking at the box score at the end of the game and thinking, oh, wow, 30 points, good for him. Tobias Harris was playing great defense last night. And I've never thought he's been a bad defender by any means. I think he's been a pretty decent defender, but good defender. But last night in particular, forcing turnovers late, slapping his hand in there, making sure he can poke the ball away, getting 2 points the other way. That's what you want to see from Tobias Harris, and need to see that more often on the defensive end, is making sure that he is forcing those turnovers. And he was doing it last night, and the offensive game stole the show, no doubt. But even Doc Rivers after the game said, I know people are going to look at that 30 points and go, wow, Toby had a great game. But what they really needed to look at was what he did defensively in this game, because that was the best game really you'd seen him play defensively in a long time. So if the Sixers are going to maintain their status as the number one team in the Eastern Conference over the next 2+ weeks here, with Joel Embiid being out, and if the Sixers are going to have a chance tonight against the Milwaukee Bucks, how about getting them on a back-to-back? Again, we've talked about it a lot. Quirky schedule in the second half of the season. If they are going to put up a fight against the Bucks tonight, they're going to need Tobias Harris on top of his game. They're going to need Tobias Harris of last night versus the New York Knickerbockers. They're going to need that type of Tobias Harris going up against the Milwaukee Bucks tonight. Ben Simmons, very aggressive early in this game. I thought aggressive in the third quarter. I thought, offensively speaking, backed off a little bit in the fourth, but he really helped you get out of the gates there early in the game and made sure that he was attacking the rim, make sure he was going after it, and that his defense was right there. How would you like to be the Knicks, by the way? You end your previous game against a rival, the Nets, with Julius Randle having a weird call there at the end. If you didn't see it, we talked about it yesterday, where he went up, the ball was blocked. He didn't drop the ball immediately. Instead, he almost came down before he let go of the basketball. The refs behind him, I don't know if he didn't see the ball tipped or whatever, but basically called a travel, and the ball went the other way. The Knicks lose the game to the Nets. And then last night, they're just trying to get a three. They're just trying to get a bucket, really, and they step on the line. Julius Randle can't make a shot in the lane. They kick it out to Bullock. He couldn't make a three. He was on the line, and the Knicks end up losing that game. And wide open looks, by the way, and they couldn't convert any of those looks into points in the final 15 seconds of this game. So it was a night of destiny, as far as I'm concerned, for the Sixers. And throughout the game, maybe you're thinking this isn't going to be the Sixers' night. They can't keep on blowing out teams. This isn't going to be the Sixers' night. Sixers made sure it was their night. And as we often say, good teams find a way to win. That's what the Sixers did last night. And they also, they realized the position that they're in. And I think it was Tobias Harris after the game that just flat out said, the Nets aren't giving them any wiggle room right now. They want to make sure they're making the playoffs as the number one seed. They want to make sure that while Joel Embiid is out, they're maintaining that number one seed. And last night was definitely a good start. I'm excited for tonight's game. Classic measuring stick game going up against the Milwaukee Bucks, and I can't wait for that. Doc Rivers said last night he hasn't really broken down too much of the film when it comes to the Milwaukee Bucks yet. He'll do that today, obviously, maybe even a little bit last night. But when it comes to them, you got to realize it's all about stopping Giannis. They run the offense through him, and this will be a big game for Ben Simmons tonight. I am expecting in tonight's game Ben Simmons to have a very similar mindset to that in which he had against the Nets. When he was going up against James Harden, the guy that he was supposed to be traded for by in a lot of people's minds, Ben Simmons played with a whole new attitude. Ben Simmons played some of the most aggressive basketball you could think of. If Ben Simmons wants to go after a Defensive Player of the Year award, well, why not go after a guy who's been the MVP? And why not go up against a guy like Giannis Antetokounmpo, who a lot of people compare you to in terms of not being able, at least he has a jump shot. Giannis will shoot that jump shot. But a lot of guys will look at Ben and say, well, maybe if he starts doing what Giannis does, which is at least shoot, then maybe he will go to the next level. I think those two players, at least defensively, are synonymous. So I would like to see Ben Simmons, and I expect to see Ben Simmons have a very similar aggressive game the way he did against James Harden and the Nets. That's what I'm expecting. In this measuring stick game, In this game without Joel Embiid, I'm expecting Ben Simmons to have a great game tonight. Maybe on the offensive end, he'll even get 20 points. But mainly tonight, I'll be looking at Ben Simmons stopping Giannis Antetokounmpo, and that's what I need to see tonight from Ben Simmons. So we'll see what happens with that game tonight. I like the Sixers tonight. I think last night was maybe a little bit looking past the Knicks, looking to the Bucks, but I like the Sixers tonight going up against the Milwaukee Bucks. Without further ado, plenty of football for you. We're going to get to the Zach Ertz conversation when we talk to our good friend Geoff Mosher coming up in a minute. But the Doug Peterson stuff, I want to make sure that you hear today because I know it's on a lot of people's minds, and it's an interesting thing. Jeffrey Lurie had a very confusing press conference after everything hit the fan, and he said that Doug Peterson didn't deserve to be fired. What? You're the guy that fired him, but didn't deserve it? Didn't want to put him through a rebuild? That's what Jeffrey Lurie said. So credit to John Clark, NBC Sports Philadelphia, for actually getting a hold of Doug Peterson, who was doing the tour with his son, who could be drafted in the NFL as a tight end. And he gets asked about whether or not he deserved to be fired. It's a weird question to ask, but it has to be asked because it's only weird because the owner made it weird. But anyway, here's John Clark with Doug Peterson on that issue.
Jeff Lurie did say that you did not deserve to be let go. So I got to ask you, I mean, do you feel you deserve to be fired?
You know, I would love to have had an opportunity to really kind of fix, you know, the season last year and get things back on track and really turn that thing around because I feel like that's something that I could have done. But, you know, and I understand where he's coming from and obviously the situation, you know, moving forward. And again, I just continue to focus on those positives and think about my time there and think about, you know, if this were the time and obviously this was the time for me to leave, well, guess what? I'm going out on a high note. I'm going out on top. I'm going out, you know, as a Super Bowl winning coach in Philadelphia. Hopefully I can, you know, I'll be welcomed back in the city one day and come back. And whether I'm coaching on the other sideline or just coming back to visit, I look forward to those moments.
I don't know anyone that would boo Doug Peterson if he came back to Philadelphia as the opposing head coach. I don't know anybody. When Andy Reid came back, he got cheered, and he didn't even win a Super Bowl here. I highly doubt that Doug Peterson would have any negative attention, and I think he's just being modest, to be honest with you. But here's the part where he was asked about if it really was the reports that came out afterwards about him saying, these are my coaches, these are the coaches I want, deal with it kind of thing. And here's Doug Peterson on that.
I've done that in you know, my time there. And obviously, you know, I'm going to continue to always stand up for the guys that I want to surround myself with and, you know, try to put my best foot forward. I feel like that's as a head coach, you know, you should have that opportunity to, you know, have the guys around you because then it's on me. Right. And then it's my decision. If it goes south at that point, then that's something I have to live with. And I'm always going to stand up for those guys, whether they're coaches, whether they're players, front office people, you know, because you want to surround yourself with guys that are loyal, guys that are, you know, going to have your back and guys that are going to, you know, stand up for you because I'm going to stand up for every one of those players in that locker room, which I did for 5 years. And obviously my coaches are the same.
You got to remember, and this is what I kept going back to in my mind. It's the worst press conference I think in the history of Eagles press conferences, which is funny that I even have a list. But anyway, the press conference a year ago at the end of the season, not the end of this year, but the end of the previous year, when Doug Peterson goes up to the podium and he's being asked about his assistant coaches, and he says Mike Rowe and Carson Walsh, the wide receivers coach, will be back next year. Then he gets asked about Jim Schwartz, and he's like, well, that's Jim Schwartz. Who's that? Never met the man. And then, of course, Mike Rowe is gone. Carson Walsh is gone. Jim Schwartz is here. And Doug then had to more or less issue a retraction from his press conference. And that wasn't the only thing that went wrong with that PC. That was one of many. But I think that moment kind of outed Doug as a guy that didn't have a lot of control over really anything when it came to anything, really, with his football team. Maybe what the next play was going to be called. Maybe that. And that was about it. But Doug, I think after that point, wanted things to change. Goes through another year with some new coaches, goes through another year with struggles with his quarterback, and then goes up to Jeffrey Lurie at the end of the season, has a very frank and open, honest conversation with him, So much so that Jeffrey Lurie feels it necessary to have a second meeting with a guy he's known for 20 years. And he goes out there to Florida, and Jeffrey Lurie says, well, what do you want to do here? This is what we want to do. What do you want to do? And Doug says, well, I want to keep my coaches. I want Press Taylor, offensive coordinator, the whole thing. And I don't fault Jeffrey Lurie for this, and I think most of us were on the same page here. I don't fault Jeffrey Lurie for being like, yeah, that ain't it, Doug. It was like Doug was this guy that we were building up saying, all right, well, you got to listen to Doug. He's a head coach, Super Bowl winning coach. You got to go with him here. You got to listen to what he has to say. Doug, what do you have to say? I want Press Taylor. Doug, shut up. You're not helping yourself. That's kind of how it felt. But to Doug's credit, that's what he felt like. That's where he felt like he was going to have success if he gave loyalty to his assistants, and that just wasn't the case. Now, the other conversation that we've been talking a lot about is the relationship between Doug Peterson and Carson Wentz and why all this hit the fan. Doug was asked by John Clark just about that conversation or just about that relationship, and here's what Doug said.
Is there anything you want to clear up about what happened with you and Carson Wentz? There were reports that you guys didn't speak for a couple months and things like that. Is there anything you want to clear up?
You know, the only thing I will say, I understand where Carson's coming from, because it's difficult when you're the starter and things like this happen and you basically, you know, you get benched and obviously, you know, our season wasn't going the way we wanted it to go and it's difficult. It's difficult for any player to go through that. I did it with Nelson Aguilar, my first year. I you know, obviously different position and all that, but you know, but you got to have the conversations. You got to have the open door policy, and you got to communicate. And felt like we did that. And I do believe that there's, I guess, a little misnomer out there where Carson and I were on such a, you know, bad terms. And I've never felt that way. You know, I've always felt like I was going to do the right thing, you know, for the Philadelphia Eagles. But yet I understand, you know, what he was feeling and what he was going through. I know there was frustration there. So I still have a lot of respect and, you know, we drafted him, you know, 5 years ago to be the guy. And I'm excited to see what he does with the Colts now. And you know, and he has a fresh start too.
One of the things that did jump out to me was that he just flat out said he got benched. Yeah, when you get benched, that's what happens. I think we all know what happened, so that wasn't exactly breaking news. But then the second part of that answer is all about the misnomer that's out there about us not getting along. From what I got out of that answer was that Doug had to do things as a head coach, and Carson did not respond well to them. I think the one thing that the Eagles botched is they never gave Carson Wentz a second chance. If there was ever anything they botched, other than making him feel like he was superior to some other people in terms of having that line to the bat phone, as Joe Santoliquito pointed out on two separate occasions, meaning he had Jeffrey Lurie's ear, Carson Wentz did. I feel like what I got out of that was Carson Wentz was uncomfortable and didn't know how to respond to being benched and didn't know how to respond to other coaching and just couldn't put it back together from what we had seen in 2017 or at the end of 2019, for instance. But listening to Doug give that answer and talk about the misnomer, it sounded like it was more one-sided. It sounded like Doug was the head coach of a football team and had to make tough decisions, and Carson couldn't respond to that. But to go back to the one thing I think the Eagles could have done different in terms of just last year alone, I don't understand how you never gave Carson Wentz a chance to respond to being benched. I will take this to the grave as one of the things that could have really altered the course of the franchise here. If they would have benched Carson Wentz in that Browns game and taken him out for the final 8 minutes, for instance, right, where there was enough distraction, enough other things, enough excuses to take him out and still put him back in for the next game and have him be the starter to give him a chance to respond. Like, if you would have taken him out against the Browns, come out of that game, Doug Peterson's addressing the media and saying, oh, yeah, well, it was rainy, it was bad weather, and, you know, we were down 2 scores, so we just felt it was time to get Carson out of there. He'll be our starter next week. I thought you always had to give the franchise guy a chance to respond. I thought it was dumb to have him just keep playing, benched. Like, that to me will never make sense. But I digress and we move on. The last thing I'll play for you here is Doug Peterson on Jalen Hurts, because he was asked about Jalen Hurts. And when you remember when Jalen Hurts was drafted with the 53rd overall pick, second round of the draft. The cameras were on Doug Peterson and Howie Roseman, and everybody was smiling. Everyone loved Jalen Hurts. They loved the pick. They loved to be able to get him there. Well, Doug Peterson was asked about the future of Jalen Hurts and whether or not he can be the Eagles' next franchise guy. Here's Doug on that with John Clark.
I think he can. He's got such a great, a lot like Carson, he's got such a great leadership style. Guys really gravitate to him. His work ethic is second to none. I think the coaching staff can, if they're patient with him and really teach and dial things in for him and really tailor the offense around his skill set, he's going to have success. He's a proven winner. He's been a proven winner, obviously, in college and at a couple of places that he's been. And I know he can do that in the National Football League. He's young, but yet he's eager. He's going to outwork everybody on the football team. That's just who he is. And so again, he's another player, young player for the Eagles that I'll follow his career but I think he'll have some success there.
Okay, well, we all hope for that, obviously. But when it comes to that leadership thing, I'm not going to be comparing anybody to Carson Wentz as a leader. I don't want to put that. I don't want to put that evil on him. Because great leaders don't have the amount of reports that come out about being pissy, being sensitive, and all that stuff that Carson Wentz had attached to him. And I think Carson again was a good, especially to Jalen Hurts. You saw the pictures of him. You saw the video of him on the sidelines putting his arm around Jalen Hurts, congratulating him on a win. You saw him being that good teammate. But in terms of being a leader, after the 2017 season, during the 2017 season, there's just been reports of Carson Wentz sulking too much. There was a report of he and Darren Sproles having a verbal altercation where Darren Sproles simply had to say, "Hey, man, I know you're not playing, but we still need you." And Darren Sproles is like, "I'm not playing either, but I'm still trying to be a leader for this football team." Jalen Hurts seems to be a far different character guy. Not good or bad, but just a different character guy than Carson Wentz. And you have seen that so far in the locker room. It reminds me a lot of Carson Wentz when he started out and taking guys to North Dakota to work out with him and stuff like that. Jalen Hurts seems to be the guy that is going that extra mile right now to take advantage of this opportunity that he is being given. And it seems like this is exactly what's going to happen at the start of the season, where he is going to be your starting quarterback, and they're not going to be exploring any other options. I mean, Jacoby Brissett just signed with the Dolphins yesterday. Like you, some of these backup quarterbacks that are available right now, like AJ McCarron, for instance, that might be your backup quarterback next year. Just to think about that. All right. Some of these other veteran guys that you had your eyes on are already gone. And I don't know where the Eagles are going to go with the backup quarterback position. I would say it's a pretty safe bet to think that they're going to go and draft somebody, but you would still think they need a veteran back there with Jalen Hurts. But he's going to be your number one guy. He's going to be the guy with the opportunity, as it's reportedly bestowed upon him from Jeffrey Lurie. I would advise him just to keep going in this direction, where people will see your work ethic. They already see your work ethic. Let that talk for itself and go out there and then go ahead and be that leader. A little bit later on in your career, hopefully you can maintain that type of leadership status with your team, the way it seemed like it started to slip away from Carson Wentz. And it seemed like as he struggled, maybe his reputation actually got better in the locker room. Maybe he was a little bit more humble. I don't know. But this year, people will try to put a horrible teammate moniker on Carson Wentz. It's certainly not my opinion at all. But hopefully Jalen Hurts will be able to, keep a longer lasting relationship with some of the guys in this locker room. And then hopefully they'll actually be able to, put it out there on the field as well, which is what matters above all else. And we won't see that until September, unfortunately. But again, great job by John Clark by getting Doug Peterson and his son Josh out there. Josh getting ready for the NFL draft, looking to be drafted in the later rounds as a tight end. So we'll see what happens. As far as Doug Peterson returning to the NFL, he didn't make it sound imminent that he just was going to take a year off, and that was that. It might be a year or two for Doug. And the guy I always think of, even though I think Doug is a better coach, is Brian Billick. Brian Billick won a Super Bowl with the Ravens, and he hasn't been a head coach since. I mean, he was a head coach with the Ravens for a couple more years after he won the Super Bowl, but hasn't returned to be a head coach. And I know that when Chip Kelly was hired here in Philadelphia, I know Brian Billick wanted his name in that circle. I can't remember if it was actually attached, but I know he wanted his name at least in that ring, and it wasn't there. So that's what Doug had to say. That's what Doug broke down. That's where Doug wanted to let us in. Before we talk to our friend Geoff Mosher of Inside the Birds podcast, I do want to tell you about our good friend Steven Singer of Steven Singer Jewelers. Here at the Steven Singer Studios, as a matter of fact, I received a message from a friend of mine, my buddy Robert, and he's going to be going in there for a wedding band today. That's right. And I said, Steven, you got to take care of my man, Robert. And I was like, I didn't even have to send that message. You know why? Everyone gets taken care of at Steven Singer of Steven Singer Jewelers. That's right. The competition must really hate this guy because he makes the experience of buying a diamond better and better and makes it fun and enjoyable for everybody. That's why the competition must really hate this guy. Steven is the very first to offer every customer the perfect price. That's right. Ever wonder if you're paying the best price? Ever wonder if the person next to you is paying less than you? You don't have to worry about that at Steven Singer Jewelers. There's no negotiating. There's no haggling. You don't have to go in there and play poker. No, you just got to go in there and worry about buying a diamond. Here's a little insider tip. Most jewelers, they actually mark up their merchandise and then just try to mark it down in front of you, make you feel like you're getting a deal. Steven doesn't do that. Steven says, hey, don't worry about coming in here and playing poker. Just come in here, buy the diamond, buy the piece of jewelry that you want the most. You don't want the most important purchase of your life to be based on your negotiating skills. It's not the case at Steven Singer Jeweler, because at Steven Singer Jewelers, you're guaranteed the perfect price all day, every day, 365 days a year. And that's why I trust Steven Singer, and you should too. It makes the experience of buying a diamond so easy. So check it out. Steven Singer Jewelers, the other corner of 8th and Walnut, right in Philadelphia, or at IHateStevenSinger.com. Steven Singer Jewelers, one place, one price. I'm not just telling you this, folks. I send my own friends and family to Steven Singer, so I would only send you there as well. All right, coming up here, joining us on the Zatos Investments guest line from Inside the Birds podcast with Adam Kaplan and Geoff Mosher. Our good friend Geoff Mosher hops on the line with us here on the Zatos Investments guest line. From Inside the Birds with our other friend Adam Kaplan as well, our good friend Geoff Mosher joins the program. What's going on, Moshe? How you doing?
I'm great, Mark. How are you?
I'm great. I'm better now that the Eagles apparently are, I don't know if this is a football term, I don't want to speak over our audience's head, an eyelash under the cap now? What's going on here? Are they even under a cap? What's going on?
Is there a cap anymore? I mean, does the cap really exist if you can give out so much money and there's technically being a cap, but you can push it all till till when you and I are going to have Kane and maybe be 6 feet under? No such thing of a cap. No, the things are good for the Eagles. And I mean, first of all, how excited are you for the start free agency? It's going to begin at 4:00. I can't wait.
I have
it's
no idea.
It's so exciting.
I don't know what's going to happen.
No idea.
I can't take it. I never have anxiety, but I'm feeling it a little bit. It is insane. This legal tampering period has just become the period.
Well, I got to tell you, there's something to be said for being the one team out of 32 that doesn't cheat. I tell you.
Now all of a sudden we're all about our moral compass.
Exactly.
So right now we're just watching the Eagles try to get under the cap as much as possible. They extend Brandon Graham. They take advantage. They restructure Brandon Brooks. They look at a restructure with Jake Elliott, their kicker, which just seems weird, but they did it. Like all these different moves that they're wheeling and dealing. Is this just a bold effort to get under that cap, or is there actually going to be something to benefit here? Like, is there a signing on the way, or is all this strictly a numbers game right now?
Well, here's how it works. A lot of people always say, man, that Howie Roseman is a genius because he figured out a way to get the Eagles at the cap or under every year. And without taking any credit away from Howie, I always like to remind the people that he doesn't have a choice. It's kind of something all 32 general managers absolutely have to do by 4:00 of the new league year. So the issue with Howie, and it's been talked about for quite a while, the issue with the team and the cap is they were so over the cap, Mark. You know of all the restructuring and the wheeling and dealing they've had to do just to become cap compliant. So, I don't have the exact numbers. Reporters, there are some websites that give you some information, but the only people who know where the Eagles cap situation are the Eagles in the NFL. All right. And obviously at 4:00, they'll be compliant. And obviously once they can get Zach Ertz off the books, which I imagine will happen, that's even more money that's going to free up. And they can still make some moves depending on what they do with Derek Burnett or whoever. You don't have to free up that much money because, as the Eagles have shown you time and time again, Mark, if you want to sign a free agent right now, you can offer him a decent amount of money, but just backload the contract so that year one is not very expensive. But I sense, and just watching how they're doing and talking, is that, they're not going to be. I mean, look, we already know that a lot of these guys have already agreed to deals, and the Eagles are sitting it out. I think they're the only team that really hasn't had a announced signing of anybody so far. They're going to be spectators more than they're going to be active participants. It doesn't mean they're not going to sign anybody. They need cornerback help. They need linebacker help. They need a quarterback. I mean, they have Jalen Hurts, but nobody ever has just one quarterback on the roster. And even though I expect that they'll probably draft one at some point in the draft, I don't know, 6 overall, but just a developmental kid. Right. They need a veteran backup. So of course they're going to have some money under the cap to be able to spend, and I anticipate they'll do that. But I know people are getting very itchy and hoping that some of these names go off the board. Then why aren't the Eagles in on it? It's just not. First of all, sorry, I'm very long-winded here.
No, by all means.
If you look at the quality of free agent this year that is signing for a lot of big money, these are guys. I mean, the top $5 figure amounts, total dollars. You got Bud Dupree, you got Trey Hendrickson, you've got the other Leonard Floyd, you got Corey Linsley, and the fifth one, Joe Tooney, who went to the Chiefs, right? I think of all those 5, none of them have made a Pro Bowl. Linsley was All-Pro. Weird to be All-Pro but not make the Pro Bowl. But so he's a good player. He's a center. The Eagles were obviously not going to invest heavily on the offensive line because they're already invested heavily there. The 2 pass rushers I mentioned are 3-4 outside linebackers. The Eagles run a 4-3. So they weren't going to be – this is not a class for them. They need a corner. They need a linebacker. You're going to see guys who are released over the next week or two as cap casualties or teams moving on who are legit and decent enough to play, but not expensive. That's the kind of secondary market that I think that the Eagles are going to try to capitalize on. It's bargain hunting, really.
Mm-hmm. Geoff Mosher joining us from Inside the Birds podcast. Great to have you on, Geoff. I thought you were going to go a different direction when you talked about Howie Roseman and getting under the cap and him being a genius and restructuring these deals. The direction I thought you were going to go was, who's giving out these deals in the first place? And that's Howie Roseman. So, I mean, is there any foresight that when Howie's signing these guys through the deal, he's thinking in the back of his mind, I've done a lot of these lately. We might have to restructure this one a couple years down the line.
So the big issue for Howie is that he didn't really have a choice. I know some people say that you should just mass cut these guys and try to start over. The problem is that because of the restructures that they had already done, a lot of the guys that we're talking about have large cap numbers in the future, right? And so if you were to cut them right now, that gets drained into your current cap. So they needed to get less money. You can't cut guys and have it cost you more money on the books because then you're going in the opposite direction. Right. So it really left him no choice to do what he did. I will say though, I mean, I think he didn't have to do it for everybody. And I think there was some risk, a lot of risk involved in how it's done. I mean, the cap will go up theoretically. I know everybody says the cap goes up, it's not going to be an issue. No, it still can be an issue. I mean, you have Darius Slay, Jason Kelsey, Brandon Graham, Brandon Brooks, Lane Johnson. That's 5 guys right there.
Fletcher Cox,
who has a bit right. If 3 of these guys are hurt this year in 2021, or just don't perform well, or aging sets in, you can't just cut them because you're going to be taking massive, massive cap hits for 2022. And even though the cap will be rising, that's still dead cap money that could potentially be. And imagine if you had the worst case scenario of 4 or 5 of these guys not being able to play well. So it's not even really a cap thing. It's more like they have to be on the team. What are you going to do with them? You saw what happened with Alshon Jeffrey. His cap number got really big. They would have loved to have unloaded him, but then he got hurt. So you can't unload a player who's hurt. So they had to stick with him this past year, right? Right. So at one point when he got healthy, they're like, my God, he makes this kind of money. He's got a cap figure that high. He's on the roster. We're going to have to try. We're going to play him to the stunted development of a guy like Travis Fulgham. So you have to hope now that you don't have 3 or 4 or 5 guys have that happen to them. the team feel forced to have to play them because of their cap number.
I know you guys had talked about this before, but in terms of bringing in a quarterback, and you mentioning drafting a quarterback, and I think they will draft one in the later rounds, like you said, not at number 6, but in the later rounds. Was Jacoby Brissett ever a real thing here in Philadelphia?
I think so. I mean, it makes sense because of his connection to the coaching staff.
Sure.
I mean, Nick Sirianni and Patullo and the Indianapolis guys. And Adam Kaplan on our podcast reported that he knew that there was interest there. Now, when you report that, people, last year we reported that they were going to be all in on Byron Jones, the cornerback who signed with Miami. They absolutely were there. They were at there were couple teams at the finish line. Miami sealed the deal. It didn't happen. That doesn't mean the Eagles weren't interested, nor were they were very competitive. We were both told that they were there. Just Miami came up a little bit better. Plus, he wanted to play for Miami. You can't control that. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean, there was interest in Jacoby Brissett. He wound up signing with Miami. Go figure. So, and then, of course, another guy who was connected to the coaching staff would be Tyrod Taylor from his time in L.A. with Steichen there. He's now with Houston. So, we'll see. I mean, there's still some decent number of backup quarterbacks. There's Joe Flacco. We'll see what happens with him. Marcus Mariota is a guy that Eagles have been reportedly interested in, and I can see why. And if he gets cut by the Raiders, then all of a sudden you can do a negotiation with him and try to bring him in at a rate you want. But they will have to sign a back. That's what we can say, Mark. You can't go into the season with Jalen Hurts and then try to draft 2 rookies in the draft later rounds and say, hey, that's our quarterback room. That's just not going to work. Maybe
that'll be the quarterback competition for the number 2 spot that Nick Sirianni was referencing. Guys, I didn't mean the starter spot. What are you, crazy? The number 2 spot. All right, Zach Ertz. Let's get into this meat and potatoes here. So, I mean, again, I don't think you got to be a brainiac to figure this one out, though. So 2 of the top tight ends go to New England. That kind of helps the Eagles. Then there was a report out there from Mike Garafalo of the NFL Network saying that Zach Ertz doesn't even want a new deal right away with whatever team takes him on. So I'm getting Zach Ertz at a good price on the first year, knowing that I'm going to have to sign him long-term after that. How is he not traded already? What's the holdup in that regard?
Well, I think the holdup would be is that everybody does this. Everybody wants a player, but they don't want to give up much, right? And they'll find every excuse. Well, he's coming off an ankle surgery, and he didn't have the greatest year. I know you guys have to get rid of him. I'll give you a 5th round. I'll give you something like that. Look, I had heard a couple of weeks ago that what Howie Roseman really wanted was a 3rd, okay? Obviously, he hasn't gotten a 3rd, or else the trade probably would have been consummated by now. I would imagine that teams right now are trying to get at Ertz at a discount price. That's probably not going to happen either. So just like we saw with Carson Wentz, right? Eventually, they got decent value in return for Wentz, and I imagine that Howie will hold that. Howie doesn't have to trade him right now. He can hold out for as long as he wants. It's not a very good tight end draft after Kyle Pitts. There's a couple guys like Freiermuth from Penn State, but it's not considered a very deep tight end draft. And then free agency is not even over yet, so other people can lose out on someone that they're looking for. I think the Chargers make a lot of sense after losing Hunter Henry. And we'll see. Zach's from California, but we'll see how it goes. But I tend to think that right now it's just got to be a better asking price.
How much does it help when a player is actually granted permission? And I always find this funny. They're granted the permission to find their own trade, to seek their own trade. How much does that make sense when it's still the Eagles that got to go, oh, yeah, we'll do that? How much does that make sense?
I think it can help in the regards that if you're just dealing with the Eagles and just the Eagles, you don't know, per se, Zach's mindset, what kind of contract he's willing to work on. If you talk to the agent and you're given that, which you're not allowed to do, unless given permission, then all of a sudden you can get an idea if you're an interested team on what we're looking at from he's owed $8 million this year. We only have 3. Can we give him 3 this year, 2 next? Can we spread it out? Are you amenable to that? Can we work under, a restructure? Do you want to be with us for more than a year, or do you really want to be a free agent next year? So now I know that you can, so I think the agent can help fill in the blanks that the team doesn't care to do. The team's just like, here, have Zach Ertz, here, have whoever. They can't speak for Ertz then.
Yeah, it helps take away a layer, in other words. It helps take away a layer. You're more so directly dealing with the player, at least with his agent, and not the team. So, that makes sense. What did you guys make? What did you make, Geoff Mosher of Inside the Birds podcast? What did you make of the most recent reports about Jeffrey Lurie being even more meddling than the last report about him meddling. What did you make of him?
You and I are of the same age, so I can't. Sometimes I think of like the end of a Scooby-Doo episode, right, where they find the villain and they pull the mask off and unveil him, and he goes, "It wasn't for you meddling kids," right? Like I feel like everybody wants to tie Jeffrey to a chair right now, and
right,
and see if there's somebody else underneath there, because he wasn't always like this. I mean, he was always a very hands-on owner. That's the one thing you should know. We've had Joe Banner on our show many times on Inside the Birds, and he has said Jeffrey has always been involved in a way where you would want your owner involved. You want him to know what's going on. You want him to be informed. You appreciate that he has an influence on the organization. He takes care of people. But I know from just talking to people, Adam, same thing, what we reported over the last 3 or 4 years, there's been a difference. It has been more hands-on. Analytics has come and played a much bigger part of the organization. Now he has conversations with coaches, after games on analytics and things like that. And that can be interpreted as, hey, look, that's a good owner just trying to get answers to questions. But it could also be interpreted as very unique around the league. But we also know there's the draft and his involvement there, which almost unilaterally people will tell you, no, the owner should not be telling you who to pick and who not to pick. I feel like fans are trying to have their cake and eat it too. Like the ones who like Jalen Hurts are like, hey, I'm glad we have an owner that does what's in the best interest of our quarterback and our team because we get to go forward with Jalen Hurts. I'm like, well, you can't say that, but then be mad at him for the JJ Arcega-Whiteside. You can't have it both ways. It's either a bad and unsound philosophy, or it's a good one. And I think it's just a little bit too much heavy-handedness right now.
We had Hugh Douglas on, as we do every Tuesday, as we like to call it, Hugh's Day here on the show. Nice. See what we did there? But I had run the highlights, or at least some of the snippets of the story from theinquirer.com. Jeff McClain put the story out there. And I ran a couple of bits by Hugh Douglas, who played for Lurie for years in Philadelphia and was there through Ray Rhodes to Andy Reid. And Hugh just said, that doesn't sound like the guy that I played for. Like, if you're going to come talk to me about a bad play after a win, to hell with that. That's not something Jeffrey Lurie would do, at least not in his time. So my guess would be, because I believe the reports that are out there, my guess would be everything changed once Chip Kelly kind of made Jeffrey Lurie feel like he wasn't the owner anymore. That's where I feel things shifted for Lurie. Do you think he got even more aggressive after that point, or kind of stayed about the same?
Well, I know that, to your point, I mean, we'll never actually know unless he says it, right? But to your point and to what we hear, certainly when he made the move to fire Chip and restore Howie, for him it was a sense of, I need to get my franchise back in order, because he was unaware of a lot of the things that were going on underneath his own nose at the time, and he felt after that he needed to be more aware, more hands-on, understandably. And again, it just seems like gradually, though, it's like he's pulling the rope a little closer to the point where now you're not just taking your franchise back, but you're exerting an influence on it that you haven't necessarily done before. And that's not really protocol with what's going on in the league. I mean, a lot of people in this town make fun of Jerry Jones for trying to be the owner and the GM, and the fact that they've made some bad decisions and not made the playoffs or won a playoff game or won a Super Bowl in the X amount of years. And you don't want the same situation here happening. The owner, in my opinion, and this is really opinion based on speaking with a lot of people around the league over the years, an owner should hire the right people in place. So that when those people come and say, Mr. Lurie, this is what we want to do, it's easier for him to sign off, because you know what? I vetted these guys. I interviewed. I trust them. I don't have to make decisions for them. If the owner's making decisions now because he feels like the people underneath him aren't doing what he wants them to do, well, then he needs to change those people, which is what anybody would do. So yeah, that's how I feel about that. Yeah.
Jeff, when can we hear the great Geoff Mosher and the great Adam Kaplan on the latest Inside the Birds podcast?
Well, our next Inside the Birds podcast will drop Thursday at 6 a.m. We just did a live stream Tuesday night that is available on it's an Ask ITB, where we answered our questions. It's available on our YouTube channel and our podcast platforms, and Q&A. Quentin Michael, Jason Avant. Let me just tell you, Mark, that show, it's already out. It's on our YouTube and podcast platforms. They both went into their very unique experiences about being free agents. Now, remember, Quentin Michael came out of the lockout, the 2011 year. So he had to sign with somebody without meeting anybody, without knowing what the money was like. It was a very unique experience. And of course, Jason Avant became a free agent after 1 year of playing for Chip Kelly. And you should definitely tune in to hear what he has to say about playing for Chip Kelly.
I remember when everything was going down, and I'm sure Jason's only got more interesting stories to tell since then. Awesome. Can't wait to check it out. Make sure you guys check out Inside the Birds podcast, available on all social media platforms, as well as InsideTheBirds.com. Geoff Mosher, thank you so much. Really appreciate you jumping on the line with us here on the Zatos Investments guest line. Geoff Mosher, Inside the Birds podcast. Thank you so much, brother.
See ya.
Thanks again to our good friend Geoff Mosher joining us there on the Zatos Investments guest line. Just two things. One, they are going to get another quarterback. Just don't know who that's going to be. Everybody's gone now, it feels like. In terms of a veteran quarterback to come in here and back up Jalen Hurts. So I don't think you're going to have that quarterback competition of just two rookies duking it out there for the number 2 spot here on the Eagles roster. So I agree with Geoff there. The other thing is this Zach Ertz idea. And like I said, Mike Garafolo reported it yesterday that Zach Ertz doesn't necessarily want a new deal. As a matter of fact, he'd be traded without a new deal. To me, I think that just makes this process so much easier to move him, because I know if I'm another team, then I am getting at least that first year at a discounted rate. So that would make me more inclined to trade for him. The other thing that helps out here is that Zach Ertz is seeking this trade, as Geoff explained to us there. I never thought of it like that, where if you're seeking your own trade, you feel like, let's just say the Colts, for instance, if I'm the Colts and I'm talking to Zach Ertz and I'm talking to just his camp, him and his agent, and I hear it from him how much he wants to play for me, then I would feel a lot more comfortable maybe giving up that 4th round pick, or maybe that 3rd round pick, unlikely, but maybe giving up that 4th round pick for Zach Ertz if I know I'm getting him in the first year at a discounted rate. I have an idea of what I'm going to have to sign him for already. So it does eliminate not the middleman, because that's the agent, but it eliminates another cog in the wheel, another process I have to go through, another step I have to take. If I'm another team, I don't have to talk to Howie. I could just talk to the agent. I could just talk to Zach and say, all right, what are you guys thinking here? If I do trade for Zach, what do you think we're dealing with here as far as a long-term deal goes? So once you can iron that out, maybe you do feel more inclined to give up that 4th round pick. So I think it's a great point by Moshe. And of course, check him out with Inside the Birds podcast as well. Before we move ahead with our big bets, our social media check-in, as well as our morning rush. And by the way, your morning rush, if you woke up this morning and you were like, you know what I need to see today? I need to see a bodybuilder punch a gymnast in the chest. A male gymnast and a male bodybuilder, just for the record. I need to see that. Well, then I got just what you need. That's coming up in our morning rush segment. But right now, let me tell you about our friends at DraftKings and DraftKings Sportsbook. March's biggest tournament finally here, getting underway this week. And you know what's going to be going on here? You're going to be making some big bets yourself with DraftKings and DraftKings Sportsbook, especially with their great offer they're offering you right now. New customers, you can get in the center of the action with this great offer. $4 on an underdog. That's it. Just bet $4 on an underdog. And you can win $256 if they win. It's just that simple. I know a lot of people are looking at Winthrop right now. They're looking at Winthrop. They're going, they got Villanova's number. That might be the upset. The upset, at least on the books, that is. You could turn $4 into $256. That's $4 into $256. Every dollar you bet could turn into $64 if you bet just $4. This is what you can do. You can pick one select college basketball team, one underdog, for your shot to win at winning $256. All it takes is a $4 bet. There's no better way to put your college basketball knowledge to the test than when you put your money where your mouth is with DraftKings Sportsbook. Don't worry if college basketball isn't for you. DraftKings Sportsbook offers odds on promotions on golf, hockey, and so much more. DraftKings is safe, secure, and reliable, so you can deposit and withdraw your funds at your convenience. Download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use promo code Farzy. That's promo code Farzy for new customers to turn $4 into $256 if your underdog pulls off the upset. That's promo code Farzy. Turn $4 into $256 for a limited time. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Must be 21 or older. President, Pennsylvania. New customers only. Restrictions apply. in partnership with Meadows Racetrack and Casino. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. This is where I tell you about Steak and Maine. Fine restaurant, Northeast Maryland. Just finer than fine, as a matter of fact. Just look at this. I played something for you before. Here you go again. Just oiling and lotioning. Just tell me you don't want to shove that in your face right now. Yeah, you know what? I'll even take the flame. I'll eat the flamethrower. I don't care. That thing looks delicious. And that's what you can get at Steak and Maine. And by the way, a little Easter brunch for people interested, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. That's my man, Tony Cavada, Steak and Maine in Northeast Maryland. Whether you dine in a more upscale steakhouse or a casual bar and patio, you will enjoy the highest quality prime meats, fresh seafood, world-class oyster bar, and freshly prepared sushi. And the extensive wine list that includes Cavada Cellars wines. I just mentioned Tony Cavada. It's his place. Well, from his family to yours with their wine cellars. Open every day for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch as well. Steak and Maine in Northeast Maryland voted #1 place for steaks in America by the Travel Channel and the Cooking Channel, and it is our own backyard. Check it out for yourself. Go to steakandmaine.com for more information. And how about Zatos? Zatos Investments, an up-and-coming luxury real estate and development investment company right in Philadelphia. They are just killing it right now in the Philadelphia area. They design and develop top-of-the-line custom homes around the city, ranging from small single-family rehabs to ground-up new construction, townhomes, and condo buildings. Get in on the action with Zatos Investments, as a matter of fact. Zatos also works closely with their private investor base to provide them with substantial returns on their investment, ranging from 20 to 40%. These guys, like I said, crushing it in the Philadelphia real estate game right now. To see some of their properties and to learn more and learn how you can invest with Zatos, reach out to Zatos Investments at info@zatosinvestments.com. That's info@zatosinvestments.com, or simply visit zatosinvestments.com. Let's get in our social media check-in, brought to you by our friends at Steak and Maine at steakandmaine.com. I was taking a peek at this earlier. Mally, are we related? Because you really say nice things about me. I appreciate you, brother. Thank you so much. Great show, Farzy. Thank you very much. 5 cross your lips. See what you did there. Broads checking in, Farzy. What's up there, Broads? Ken Morrissey says, Mark! Ken! Good morning. James checking in. High note, bro went 4-11. We went 4-11. Okay, James, I'm with you. That jumped out to me, too. When Doug Peterson said that to John Clark and said, I'm going out on a high note, I was like, that was a couple years ago. That's like win a Super Bowl after, 2 years of coaching, head coaching? And that's like, peace, I'm out of here. That's going on the high note. Winning only 4 games, and not so much a high note there. I hear you on that. We do love Doug. Wait a minute. Andy is huggable? Andy, I think, is huggable now. Andy Reid is huggable now. And that was back to the conversation we were having about welcoming Doug back. People said, JD saying that we love you, Doug. And yeah, we do love Doug. And it's weird. Who is the more lovable guy? Or should I go with James here and saying, who's the more huggable guy? Is it Andy or is it Doug? I guess right now it would be Andy. Huggable? Yeah. All right. These are the things I'll think about later today. Who else do we have here? Jacob checking in. Leadership skills like Carson. Yeah, Jacob, I'm on the same note as you. Jacob wants to say, what is Bobby Hoying doing? I don't think much of anything, to be honest with you. We got Nate Malley checking in. Nate's not technically under contract, so there's an issue here. They need to have a quarterback. Nasty Knuckles podcast. Meant to give you guys another shout out yesterday. I got you. And by the way, happy birthday, Riley Cote. Riley Cote's birthday was yesterday. We talked to him last night or 2 nights ago after the Flyers game, and I didn't even know it was his birthday. I feel like a jerk. I texted my man, told him happy birthday. So happy birthday to Riley Cote. I hope he enjoyed his time with his family yesterday. Those are people checking in there on our social media check-in, brought to you by Steak and Maine. Luigi checking in, saying this is straight nonsense. I don't know what he's referring to, but there's a lot of nonsense in the world, Luigi, and I'm with you there. By the way, Luigi, I saw you calling out my middle name, Albert. Just your dad's name. Saw you yesterday. Calling me out on social media for that, saying that, I would keep the Albert out of it. I like my name, Albert. It's Mark Albert Farzetta. It's not like I'm Albert Marc Farzetta and I go by Mark. No. But yeah, I was named after my grandfather, as a matter of fact. But that's a whole other story for a whole other day. Yeah, thank you for checking in on our social media check-in, everybody. I'm looking at our YouTube comments and try to follow those comments throughout the show. So there you are right there. Now, how about our morning rush? Brought to you by Sky Motorcars, SkyMotorcars.com. If you haven't checked out Sky Motorcars yet, what are you doing with your life? Check out Sky Motorcars, people. Morning rush, as we like to start out with some notable scores. Last night, the Jazz beat the Celtics 117-109. Jaylen Brown had 28 points, as a matter of fact. Heat are red hot right now, and this plays into my big bet segment because they just beat up on the Cavs last night, 113-98. Jimmy Butler had 28 points. Heat have won 11 of 12, so yeah, they're pretty hot. I'm just not being cute with the word heat. They are red hot right now. Tonight, 76ers and the Milwaukee Bucks. Sixers coming off a back-to-back. Bucks coming off a day off, but also coming off a very comfortable win the other day against the Wizards that featured Chris Middleton, Brook Lopez, as well as Giannis Antetokounmpo, being 3 of the 7 scorers they had finish in double figures in points. Giannis also coming off a triple-double performance. He had another one, 31 points, 10 assists, and 15 rebounds in that game. Bucks are 2.5 games behind the Sixers right now for first place in the Eastern Conference. So a lot of people are going to have their eyes on this matchup tonight. Bucks enter tonight at -6.5. That's where they're opening up on DraftKings tonight. So if you want the action, that's the action that is going on tonight surrounding the 76ers. Huge game for both teams. The Bucks have kind of been under the radar. They went through a big spell a couple of weeks ago where they just weren't able to put some wins together. Sixers, this is a huge measuring stick game for them to announce their presence with authority, as I like to say, for the top seed in the Eastern Conference. And it ain't going to get easier from this point out. They're going to have their work cut out for them, especially coming off a back-to-back. I issued the challenge to Ben Simmons. It's going to be all about Ben tonight. It's going to be all about Ben defensively, and I hope he has that same little edge that he had when he went up against the Nets and James Harden. So we'll see how that plays out tonight. I mentioned a little while ago, if today you said to yourself, man, I'd really like to see a world's strongest man punch a gymnast in the chest. If you haven't seen this is courtesy of Lad Bible overseas across the pond, as they might say. Gymnast Niall Wilson decided it would be a good idea to take a punch in the chest from world's strongest man competitor, Eddie Hall. And here's how it played out. Let this start off your morning, folks.
Feel safe in that?
I don't know. Just give me a little one. Just give me a little one.
Just a left-hand jab?
Give me a little one.
You ready for a big one?
No. My head.
I think I've actually knocked him out. You okay?
I'm alright. My head.
I don't know why that made me laugh so hard. But anyway, hope that helped you start your day this morning, ladies and gentlemen. That was our morning rush brought to you by Sky Motorcars and SkyMotorcars.com. I don't want no smoke, all right? I don't want no smoke. I told you I wasn't betting the Sixers last night. Sixers did not cover last night, but they did win the game. So that one doesn't go. That one doesn't go in my Rolodex for bets this year. No. It was not an official bet. I got to bet the game. I didn't bet the game. The game I am going to bet tonight, I'm going to go back to riding the Cavs. And how terrible they are at basketball. They're coming off a back-to-back tonight against the Celtics at minus. The Celtics are -9 on DraftKings. Big bets, of course, brought to you by DraftKings and DraftKings Sportsbook. Celtics are going into this game -9 against the Cavs in Cleveland. Both teams coming off a back-to-back. Even Jason Tatum was saying they're starting to play some of their best basketball this year. I am going with the Celtics tonight to cover -9 against the Cleveland Cavaliers. I am betting that game, putting that in the Rolodex. So I like them to cover against the Cavs tonight in Cleveland. I believe it's an 8:10 tip-off tonight. So make sure you check out that game. Folks, I'm excited. I'll be tweeting with you tonight. Oh, I can't forget this. By the way, I said yesterday we're going to have a special guest today. I love Geoff Mosher. I wouldn't tease Geoff Mosher as my special guest. And my special guest had to move to hopefully tomorrow. These guys are tough to pin down. Hopefully we'll be able to make that announcement a little bit later on today as to who we can talk to tomorrow. But Geoff Mosher is still special. He's special to me, special to you. You know, Inside the Birds special podcast. So hopefully we'll have our super special guest for you tomorrow, joining us on the program. Jim Hyden produced the show today. This is a Buzz Sports and Entertainment production. My name's Marc Farzetta here from the Steven Singer Studios. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. Be back with you tomorrow. I will be tweeting with you during tonight's huge game against the Milwaukee Bucks. So hopefully we'll have some fun back and forth throughout that one. Have a great rest of the day, everybody. Talk to you tomorrow. Bye.